Hello, my name is Tim Anderson of Electric Productions, and today what I'll be doing is actually remixing a song I've originally done titled Dream, featuring vocals by Emily Richards. And by remixing this, what I'll actually be doing is giving you a general idea of how I mix, and hopefully by the end of this video you can take a few nuggets of your own and apply them to your mixes as well and potentially make them better. So I'll try not to bore you, I'll try to keep this to the point, I'll try to keep it basic, I'll try not to prolong it in any way. So right now, let's without further ado, let's get to the point. Okay, so let's take a look at these drum tracks right here. This is basic drum track. Sounds pretty good, nice and pulsing. It was recorded well. I believe it was previously recompressed, but I'll go to the EQ panel right here. What we've got going on, we've cut everything below 40 with the high pass filter. With drums, you usually don't need frequencies below 40 hertz. What that does is actually cloud up your mix. You don't really need that. And with the low pass filter, I've cut that at about 15. Usually you want to cut that about 16 to 18, but with these cymbals in this drum track, they're actually kind of bright, so I slimmed it down a little bit lower just to compensate a bit. But other than that, this drum track looks good, so let's move on to the next thing. I won't put any effects or any compressing on it because that was previously done. And let's go on to the next. What we have here is on the next. Okay, so with this next slot on the mixer, this is actually a room mic. What's going through it is actually a kick drum and some rim clicks on the snare drum. This kick is actually boomy on purpose, and have a bit of a strange method of making it boomy. Actually, you can do this by it's the way you stroke the drum with the pedal, and also the way you muffle the kick drum. And what you also want to do to get your kick to sound this way, you might want to EQ it a bit to boost up the lows, but just actually expanding it, because when just a soft stroke on the kick is all you really need. After that, you just expand it, and afterward, well, you want to compress the hell out of it afterwards, and that will actually make it boomy like that. So you're just all toying around with it, just getting the best sound that works for you. I've done that in quite a few songs, and it's actually, I've actually got a lot of good comments on that. So let's look at the filters we've got going through on the EQ. High pass, I cut everything below 30 because I actually want a little bit of sub bass from that boomy kick. So I've kept everything above 30 hertz. I've cut everything off at about 14, a little bit over 14 kilohertz, because I actually have those rim clicks in there as well. And the hi-hat's actually being mashed at the same time. So that's pretty much that. And now let's go to the actual tambourine. This is pretty much simple. I'll actually have to mute these drums. They're actually getting annoying right now. So let's see. Where is the tambourine track? It's muted. So it's actually labeled a hi-hat on here because it's actually a tambourine mounted on a hi-hat. So we've got the foot pedal going in there as well. On the filters, I've cut everything below 260. You don't really need that because this is a brighter sound. It's hi-hat. You don't really need any lower hi-hat and tambourine. You don't really need any lower frequencies as much. And I cut it off at 14.6 because it came out a little bit bright, and I actually might EQ this a bit later in the process just to mess with a bit, so it'll fit in a little bit better. I actually might pan this a little bit to the left, just just to get it out of the center spectrum. I don't want to cloud that up too much. So let's move on to the clap. And no, not the STD. This is hand claps, which they actually go with the drums. So I think I actually doubled these because it's originally four. Four people actually got together and clapped these out. So, and it still wasn't beefy enough. So actually, I'm going to use wave doubler on this to make it sound even thicker. I actually cut everything around 500, well below 500, and cut everything above 1300. We'll just round. But yeah, you don't really need stuff like that. So the clap is sounding good. We'll boost it a bit in the volume category. We won't have it clipping, but we'll just have it to where you know it's there. And we'll pan it over a little bit. And there you have the clap. Let's go on to the bass guitar. Bass guitar. It's just funny how it ends right when I get to that. Bass guitar is pretty basic. Let's see what we've got here on the low pass filter. I've got everything around 40. That's kind of some people don't, but I did because I really don't want too much sub in this, and I've cut everything a little above, below, everything above 12.3 will be bypassed. So that's stuff you don't need. I actually need to pull out a effect here. What I'll be pulling out is the SSL channel stereo plugin. This is pretty much the same thing you'll find on a SSL mixing console, just in a plugin. So what I'll do here is I'll toy with this a bit. Just bear with me. I'll boost a little bit low, around 50. Yeah, 50. And I'll mute some of these percussion here that I don't need. I'll actually play the drum track with this just to give me a better idea. I like to boost a little bit of the top end on the bass guitar. So I'll actually cut some of the low middle frequencies a bit around I'll take that back. Around the 800 range with the bass guitar. That's actually, I consider it a sweet spot. What you do by this is actually make your bass a lot more bassier. Gives a little bit more life, a little more punch. So you take advantage of that if you can. I'll actually change the curve of that EQ a bit. And what we'll do here is around 1.5 kilohertz, if I can get to there. I'll cut right there a bit, not too much. My rule of thumb is when you're EQing, if you have to EQ more than negative 6 dB or plus 6 dB, you need to reconsider re-recording it, because I consider that too much. That's just me in personal taste, but that's just the way I operate. And so I'll actually also put a gate on this bass guitar. And the trick with bass guitar is what you do when you actually gate a bass guitar, you actually see the green light right there cutting on and off. I haven't really got it to where I want it, but keep the release around say there, trying to match up the threshold the way I want it. But you see, the green light on the gate going on once the bass releases will actually, when you actually apply gate to a bass guitar like this, you potentially make the bass punchier in the mix, which actually works well to your advantage. Makes the whole track pulse, makes it a lot more punchier, and that's something you really need to take advantage of when you're mixing and actually messing around with a bass guitar track. And I'll actually compress this to about 3.1, cut the threshold a bit to about -1, not much. I'll have the compressor release up to about a 2, well, not that much. Quick release here, 0.15 if I can get there with this shady mouse. And there you have it on the bass guitar. That's about the way we want it right here, the way I would do it. And so on to the next thing. We'll cut that right now. Ukulele track. This is actually a very repetitive ukulele track. We'll raise it up a little bit. I've got all the faders at low levels because you want to mix at low levels. What this does is actually, when you master your song, you potentially make it louder. You have more headroom, therefore you can make the mix much louder. You can actually make your mix sound better when you turn the volume up with this trick. This is actually a simple trick to do when you're mixing. Ukulele, we'll look at the filter I've got going on here. I've cut everything at 40, not very steep, but just kind of a little roll off. And I've cut everything not very steep at, well, above 15 kilohertz, as we don't need that in the ukulele. We don't want it too bright. What I'll do is I'll pan this about 20 to the right. This is how I originally done it in the mix, and it sounded quite well. We'll keep that there. And I'll actually want to think about EQing this, because it's a little bit lifeless in some frequencies. And I think before I used a preset from one of the waves. I'm big on wave plugins if you haven't seen already by this huge list I have here. Let's see if I have it in my arsenal. I haven't loaded everything on here. Where is my VEQ? VEQ 3. That's good enough. We'll have to, we've got a bit of a glitch, so we'll have to close and open it. I think I stuck with classic guitar. You see how it kind of raised the higher frequencies a little bit, gave it a little bit more grit, well, not grit, but sparkle. That sounds well. The high pass filter on this is actually a little bit, it's going to 80, and I'm actually going to leave it that way because, just thinking about it, I really don't need anything lower than 80 with the ukulele, so I'm going to leave it like that, and it'll actually work out to my advantage in the final mix, hopefully. And so on to the next. Goody. What we have now is the vocals, and we'll actually start at the beginning with the vocals. Don't wanna believe. Emily is actually a great singer. I love her work. But what we've got, I've actually loaded these effects already. I got a little bit happy with remixing this. And originally, and in this mix, I've got her vocals going through a Pultonic tube equalizer. What this is actually it emulates one of the vintage tube model equalizers you find on analog mixers, blah blah blah. Right now I've got it bypassed, And while it's bypassed, you can actually, I'll bypass all effects actually, and you can actually see how lifeless the raw vocal was. And just by adding this, when you add the platonic tube EQ on her vocals, it has a little bit of scratch in the higher frequencies, a little bit of grit and scratchiness in the voice. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It actually sounds well. It actually brings out more life and character to her voice, which it works out well in this mix. So I've got it going through a tube EQ, tube equalizer, and we've had it back on since I closed that, and actually have her voice going through wave doubler. What that does, as I cut it back on, it doubles her voice, just makes it thicker. I think this is the original preset I had it on, but I moved it down a little bit because when I got to mixing the whole song, it was a little bit too thick. So backing these down a little bit, messing with the frequency curve here, that actually worked out well. And now you can hear how much character her voice has now. I'm not going to add any reverb to this because in this song, her voice doesn't really sound as well with reverb. It's great like it is. On the filter curve, what we've got going here, I've bypassed everything lower than 82. With vocals, you actually want to bypass at 80, but I kinda didn't roll off everything. It was partly because I didn't slide the mouse all the way down, but it's not going to be a big deal. It's a slight curve. It's not too deep, and I've bypassed everything at 16. As with vocals, you don't really need anything above 16 kilohertz. So the filter's good and everything like that. So we'll actually move on to this now. Auto tune. Her voice actually was not out of tune. I actually liked it the way it was when I recorded the original song, but auto-tune, people go on and on and on about auto-tune. It's actually an insurance policy, and if you do professional mixes, you will actually want to take advantage of auto-tune. I've got it bypassed right now, but just in case there's a few notes that aren't actually on par, you actually want to have this as a backup. Not this much. I'm actually proving a point. We don't want her sounding like T-Pain, but more subtle. Just some auto-tune settings for a more natural vocal sound. You can keep this at relaxed, which is what I'll do right here. I'll keep it at relaxed, but you can also go to choosy, where we're even more smooth sound, I guess. But obviously this is in the key of E minor. It's important to know what key your song is, or the vocal is in, so you know what notes for auto-tune to hit and correct. So this is an E minor. We've got that going good. She is more of an alto voice, so we'll put the input type on alto 10, and we'll definitely move this up to about 100 because we don't want her sounding like T-Pain. We want it more subtle, more natural, more humanistic. So 99's about good. We'll humanize this to about 50%. And the 4-minute amounts, these were originally at 0, and the pitch amount is about at 40, I guess. I think that's the default preset, but for natural vocals, you will want your pitch amount down to 0, amplitude amount to 30, 4-minute amount to 100%, and you don't want a vibrato. You don't necessarily want a vibrato. That might be to your advantage depending on how and what you're mixing. We'll actually cut these down because we don't need these, and we'll cut that down, and we'll move on. But her vocals are great. auto-tune is actually just in case she hits something bad that the ear, our natural ear, doesn't correct. I'm sorry, I'm straying off the Facebook, but yes, and that's good. Now we'll move on. Goody acoustic guitar. This is the we'll listen to a bit of that while we will take this to the beginning of very good, beautiful sounding acoustic guitar. This is a quite simple 3-chord song, but I mean, regardless, the acoustic guitar sounds great in this. I'm not saying that because I've played it myself, or programmed or played it, or whatever you want to call it, but it actually sounds very well. And I've bypassed everything under 30 hertz, as you don't need that with an acoustic guitar really. Cut everything around 16.2, cut everything above 16.2, as you don't need that. And let's see, I'm trying to think of how I exactly panned this in the original. And we'll look back at the vocal. We always want to keep the vocals mono unless we have doubles going on or backings or such. But I think I'll actually keep this mono as well. And we'll actually look for a reverb to go behind this acoustic guitar. As in the original we had, which is it? I'll have to search it out here. True Verb, good old True Verb. True Verb. We won't have that effect, the default. What I like is actually the New York plate, and I'll actually move it over slightly. Modify presets. It's always good not to use presets. They help sometimes, but it's also good to toy with the faders and knobs on the actual effects before you use them to get a better idea of what sound you're looking for. And I'll mute Emily right here because she's getting on my nerves at the minute. Not during the full song, but just while I'm trying to teach anyways. We noticed how that reverb actually brought a little bit more life into it. I'm thinking of actually EQing this a bit with the graphic equalizer. Nothing fancy. We'll play this one more time, if we can get to it. I'll cut that out. We don't need that. Kind of curve these a bit up to about 100. This is where 100 is where you really, with the life of any guitar, really lies. And everything right here in the 100 to 315 range, well, I'll take that back, 125 to 315 range is, you want to maybe back it down a little bit. 200s, the 200 frequencies, 200, 250, those, bringing those up too much actually can cause a lot of mud in your mix, especially with electric guitars, which we don't have in this song. But the 200s I try to back away from just a bit because they can mud up your mix and make it less clear. The 400 frequency with strings or guitars is a very important frequency. If you actually boost this frequency a good bit, strings become more lush, more full, and you can also use that to your advantage in your mix. Need some coffee. But the 1 kilohertz, that frequency, I like to cut that down a little bit. That's the 1K is the annoying frequency, as I like to call it. It can be annoying at times, especially with brighter sounding sounds or instruments. That is, I'll boost this one a little bit, boost the 2K. Cut back on the 3.2 a little bit. I'll dip up when it comes to the 4 kilohertz and 5K on up to about 8. 5. We won't be using that much, but the 5K, when you boost this, it actually brings a lot more sparkle into your mix. It makes guitars really shimmer, really bright. And this is when you're EQing, you really want to pay attention to the 5K and potentially the 6, because they can really bring your guitar sound to life. And so once we get to the 8 kilohertz range, we want to dial it down a bit, and we'll bypass 25K as we don't really have that going anyway. 20K, 16K, I'll have that down there. But EQing for that acoustic guitar looks great. Now let's move on to the other one. The second is actually just on the melodies. Well, Emily's singing her dream. Yeah, excuse my horrible singing right there. But you can actually hear it now. I'll pan it about to 25 or 26. That's good. I'll boost it a little bit in the volume department, and we'll go back to it. This is actually, if it sounds familiar, I wrote this song based off the concept of Daydream Believer by the Monkees, and that was one of their biggest hits. Davy Jones recently passed, rest in peace. But yeah, it actually gives effect to the song while she's singing Dream. It's very melodic, very dreamy, very simple, just simple plucking. And the way I've done this, I have true verb on it too, I believe. I think it was previously compressed, that's why I'm not worried about it. Plus I'm gonna run this through a bus compressor. I had Studio A reverb, the reverb preset on here, which I'm not gonna go completely based off the preset. I'm gonna toy with it a little bit. That might be a bit much. We'll lower the decay time a little bit. Too much. Let's go back. Just a dabble do you on reverb a lot of times. Just a dabble do you. You don't want to overdo it. Just keep it simple. And so basic as that is, we will go on to the EQ. I'll do this one the same as I've done the ukulele. Now it's where did I yeah, here we go. VEQ 3, 4, blah blah blah, either one. It's all in how you turn the knobs. It's all in how you turn the knobs. Now hopefully you're still following me. Just be patient, and we may get somewhere in life. We will I'll stick to that classic guitar. We want that 150 hertz, so we will leave the high pass filter at 82. Low pass filter, whoa, I'm turning the wrong knob there. We'll leave that at 18. Everything else is good. Somebody's messaged me on Facebook, but the 6.8. Frequency is good. Yeah, we'll keep that like that. That should be good. And I don't want too many things going on in the left ear of the stereo spectrum. So I'm either going to pan this to the left, or either pan the ukulele to the left. The ukulele is very important and dominant in the mix, so I'm probably going to swing this over about 10 to the left, just to keep it less distracting and keep both of your ears entertained. As funny as that sounds, keep both your ears entertained. I like a lot going on in the mix, in different places, not in just one place. I don't like what goes through the speakers to be in one area. I like for it to be through both left and right channels, within moderation, that is. And so on this low pass filter, this is actually the mix bus track. I will keep everything around there, 16.6. Bypass everything, 20, nice and steep. And I've got a limiter. I've got the Waves L2 going as a limiter on the bus track, which everything's going through the bus track, as I will go back and do the faders to this. So yes, I'll put a compressor on this mix bus, and the same with the original mix. I used SSL comp as the compressor for the mix bus, and it's just as simple, really. Once it comes up, I use the Lily White Mix Bus 1 preset, and it actually works out quite well with this mix. So we'll play a little bit of the whole mix, not just the as you can hear, things are starting to shape up a lot more. You can hear all parts going on. And without further ado, I will cut the video as I will set these envelopes, and we will get back. Well, one more little thing I want to change. I want to actually add another effect on this. This is actually Tone Boosters Pharaoh, as I like to call it. It's the analog tape simulator. What this does is actually adds a little bit of saturation to the mix, as well as cuts the lows and highs the same way the analog tape does, because as you see, this is digital mastering. Well, not mastering, but mixing rather. And this will give it more of an analog feel, not necessarily a full analog sound, but it'll give it that feel slightly. And so we have it on a very clean setting. And without further ado, I will cut the video and we will go to the master fader track and the final mix as I adjust the faders. Stay tuned. Okay, welcome back. I've done the envelopes. Everything is set. As you can see, I've set the faders pretty basic, nothing fancy. This is just a teaching tool, so I've kept it basic. A lot of steep curves, but that's just how I do mine. And it's always important to remember to set envelopes on your tracks, because the difference between a amateur track and a professional track is envelopes. You want everything dynamic, you want everything changing, you want contrast, you want variation. So it is always important to have your volume and panning levels change throughout the song, but within reason. You don't want it crazy. You want it reasonable. You want it smooth. You want everything to blend and ultimately sound well. So, other than the faders, I haven't changed anything else. You might see some red lights when I play the final mix, but once again, this is a teaching tool. Normally you wouldn't have clipping, but I'd fix this. But what we've got right here, what I added to the master track is the Wave C1 comp. What this does is actually I have it set on upward expander. What this does is it expands the threshold a little bit, and I have it set differently than the preset, obviously. And basic mastering job. This is one of the things you would use to master a track, but we're doing basic. Normally you take days to master one track alone, and you normally wouldn't master your own tracks unless you absolutely had to. But this is one of the tools you would use. This is the Waves L2 maximizer. You can use any maximizer for mastering, but right now I have it set on something basic just to get the volume slightly below peaking for the play of the final mix. It's nothing fancy. Again, this is not really how I would master a song, but mastering will be another video, however. So without further ado, why don't we play the final version?
Don't wanna believe what I see on the live stream, what they sell me on the TV. It's haunting. But if you let down your gun, you can feel the winter warming the sun through the window, and the soft glow of mother turning. Imagining you and me in the same dream. If we open hearts while we're making a start to remember the one part of every soul beneath their guard. So if you let down your gun, then at least we have begun to recondition. If we listen to our Father's yearning. Dream, dream, imagining you and me in the same dream. Dream, dream, imagining you and me in the same dream. With the same dream, with the same dream, imagining you and me in the same dream. You can feel the winter warming the sun through the window, and the soft glow of a mother turning. Don't wanna believe what I see on the live stream.
Well, friends, there you have it. These are the basics of how I would remix this song. Now we've listened and we've watched this song come to life. Now keep in mind there are some technical aspects that I would have gone back over. But once again, this is a teaching tool. Especially with the certain faders, I would definitely go back and maybe compress some things over again, or either notch some faders down a little bit. And also with the mastering job we had done here, obviously I'd go back and throw some EQ in there and maybe analyze the stereo image a little bit and check that out and see if everything's, the energy is going through the speakers quite the way it should be. And well, you've sat here and listened to me talk all this time, and hopefully you've learned something from it. Well, with the song we witnessed, it started out pretty smooth, pretty vocals and ukulele kind of carried it over, and it went through smoothly. And once it got towards the end, the guitars played it out, and there was a lift in the volume, especially with the guitars and the bass as it played out. And the song ended nice and strong. So there you go. This is Tim Anderson from Electrolytic Productions and Grace Note Studios in Shelby, North Carolina. And please subscribe. And if you would like this song, I will graciously give you a free download. Thanks for watching and have a good day.